Hi there, I'm Clifford Bates, and welcome once again to our next session of reading Aristotle's Politics. Again, we're looking at Book 7 of the Politics on the best regime, his Aristotle's account of the regime that we would pray for. And today we're looking at chapter 13. Okay, that's right there. We should begin our concern with chapter 13. So let's get this done here. So let's start to the text, okay? So concerning the regime itself, and out of which and what sort of persons the city is going to be blessed and finally, beautifully, nobly governed should be constituted. We should now speak. Okay, so therefore, what concerning yourself, and out of which, what sort of persons the city that is going to be blessed and finally governed should be constituted. We're going to speak. There are two things that living well, and there's two things that living well consists in for one and all. Right? One of these is in the correct positioning and of the aims and the ends of action. So therefore, the correct positioning of the aims and ends of actions, and the other, discovering the actions that bear on the ends. Okay, so what does this mean? In order to live well, we have to look at what is the correct position. What is the aim? What is the end? The aim. What is the goal? What is the goal of living well? What is the great goal of living well? In other words, that the ends of action. What are the in other words, praxis, action, are acting, doing, living. What is the end? What is the purpose of this living well? What is the real purpose of this living well? Consistent. In other words, two things that living well consist in. One is that the correct positioning of the aims, or ends, the goals, ends of action, right? And the other one is discovering the actions that bear on the ends. In other words, the things that lead us to those ends. What kind of actions hit on those ends? Means, right? Maybe means in that sense. These things can be constant with one another or dissonant. In other words, ends and means, right? I think this is what he's talking about here. One is talking about the ends, the goals, the purposes, and the other one is the actions or the means to achieve those ends, right? They can be constant, in other words, an agreement, harmonious, right? Or they can be dissonant, disharmonious. For sometimes the aim is finely, beautifully, nobly, cologne, positioned, but in acting they misachieving it, right? So therefore, the goal may be but actually trying to actualize it. So this is the difference between intentionality and actualization, right? This is the ends means, but also intentionality and actualization of the thing, the bringing, the doing of it. So that what we intend to do, what we seek to do versus what we then do, right? Um, in other words, they finally posited, but in acting they miss achieving it, and sometimes they achieve everything with a view to the end. In other words, but the end they posited was bad. So in other words, if the end is a bad end, they achieve it, but it's the bad end, right? Um, and sometimes they miss both. They posit wrong, but they don't achieve, right? Sometimes they miss both. In connections with medicine, for example, doctors sometimes neither judge rightly what the quality of the healthy body should be, nor achieve what is productive in relation to the object which they then for themselves set. Okay, again, this is the idea that is understanding what is the best state, what is the thing we should aim towards. They misunderstand it or they misjudge it. They misunderstand, and when they do their medicine, they don't achieve what they sought to even achieve. Okay, they didn't. They do. They don't achieve what they sought to achieve. Right. This is so. Therefore, this is the negative, double negative. Right. They neither uh, 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 pick the right end, pick the best thing, and they also don't achieve the thing that they thought that were going to achieve. Right. Um, but in all the arts and sciences, both of these should be kept in hand. The end and the actions directed towards that end, right? any arts and sciences, in all the arts and sciences, the end and the means to achieve that end, or the actions, that things that you have to do to achieve that end, must be kept at hand, the center of our attentions, the things that we're concerned with. Now that everyone strives for living well, so therefore, this is the idea. Remember that all regimes aim towards the good. This leads us to the beginning of the ethics, right? All seek the good, but um, um, all regimes think they're living well. All regimes think they are living well. This is what the way they're advancing is living well, and for happiness, and living well is, and for happiness, this is the end, right? Living well is what they seek, and happiness is their end, right? It is open to some to achieve these things, but to others not, on account of some sort of fortune or nature. For living nobly or beautifully requires a certain equipment too, less of it for those in a better state condition, more for those in a worse one. So, in other words, if you're in a good condition, you don't need as much equipment, and if you're in a not good condition, you need more equipment, right? In order to live nobly, requires equipment. Okay. Now, if you're in good condition, a good condition, those who are in good condition, you need less equipment. If you're in not so good a condition, you might have to need more equipment, to achieve your end, right? This is the idea that in order to, it is open to some to achieve these, but to others not. Why? Why is it difficult to achieve living well? Because even if, regardless if you're wrong about living well, again, this is the thing. You, you, this is what's interesting here. It's that he's saying that even if we're wrong on this, but achieving it, and that therefore even the wrong end, you still have to have equipment to do it, right? Even if your condition is to do it right, like in other words, even if you're going to get your wrong end, achieving that wrong end, right? Now people say, well, we shouldn't do that. We shouldn't achieve the wrong end. But if this is the problem about political justice, that um, the question of what is virtue is not clear, and that everyone's kind of understanding it in this sense, doing it. So therefore, what is best? What is best is, trying to moderate the unjust and the imperfect, right? But therefore, we should still try to achieve that moderation, achieving it, right? Here, that you're trying to achieve is what is best. You think you know what is best, and you need to try to achieve it. And therefore, what equipment is the necessary thing? He's saying here. In other words, some of fortune or nature, right? On account of some sort of fortune or nature. Okay, therefore, here's the other problem. Not everyone's going to be able to do it because of either fortune, luck, right, or nature. They don't have the proper nature for achieving what is best. Now he's saying here, equipment helps us to it, right? Equipment also does it. If you're in a worse condition, if your nature is not worse, maybe some equipment can help you and you can do it, right? Therefore, this is interesting here. Some on the other hand, seek happiness incorrectly from the outset, though it is open for them to achieve it. In other words, they make the wrong choice. They know they could achieve happiness, but they choose not. They choose something else other than happiness. Since our object is to see the best regime, and this is the one accordance with which a city would be best governed, and it would be best governed in accordance to the one that would make it possible for the city to be happy most of all, it is clear that one should not overlook what happiness is. So, what is happiness? Therefore, this focuses us the question of what is happiness, and again to the book Nicomachean Ethics. Right now, he's going to talk about happiness here. We assert. So, therefore, this is where next thing we assert. This is an assertion, right? And we have defined it thus in the discourses on ethics. If there is any a thing of benefit in those. 66 is this refers to the Univ Ethics. he seems to be referring to Univ Ethics 1219A28, and then B12, and then Univ Ethics 1298B29 to 31, and 1099B26 and B129B31, different passages about what happiness is, right? Um, that happiness is the actualization and completion of the complete practice of arete, virtue. And this is not on the basis of a presupposition, but unqualifiedly. In other words, this is not a presupposition. It's unqualifiedly happiness is the actualization of the practice of virtue. And this is not a presupposition of this. This is the unqualifiedly. This is simply the case of virtue. Those who have virtue, those who have is actualized and complete practice of virtue are happy. By not, but not on the basis of presupposition. I mean necessary things. By unqualifiedly, beautifully, nobly. In other words, this is. In other words, not on. This is I mean necessary things. In other words, it's by not on the presupposition. This is the necessary things. Okay, so he's saying what? That happiness is the actualization of complete virtue, but not on the basis of a presupposition, right? So there's not, therefore, it's the presupposition in this by means, I mean necessary things. By unqualified, he means nobly, but nobly, beautifully, cologne, right? In the case of just action, for example, just retribution and punishments derive from virtue, arete. But they are necessary and have the element of nobility only in a necessary way. So therefore, in other words, retribution and punishments derive from virtue, but they're necessary. They're a necessity, and have their elements of nobility derived in a necessary way. For it would be more choice-worthy if no man or city required anything of this sort. In other words, it'd be most choice-worthy. You wouldn't have to punish, and you wouldn't have to give rewards. They would just do it, right? But actions directed to honors, and what makes one well off, are very noble in an unqualified sense. So, in other words, punishments and rewards, retribution and punishments, right? Retribution, not punishments. Retributions and punishments are these negative things. We shouldn't have. We shouldn't need them. They're necessary. These are necessary. They happen out of necessity because people aren't doing what is things, and this is correcting the error, right? It would be more choice-worthy that people just not do these things, right? He's saying that no man or city required correction or punishment, right? Retribution. But actions that are dealt with, in other words, actions that are to honor, and what makes one well off are very now well off, right? Well off. That doesn't mean money. I mean better. Well off, better. You could say, right? I think it means better here, not money sense. Are very noble in an unqualified sense. For the one is in a sense the choice of an evil. In other words, correction and punishment is a choice because of an evil was made, and therefore you have to correct it, right? But the action of the latter sort are the opposite. In other words, these over here about honor and well off. These are noble things. These latter sorts are the opposite of an evil. These are good. These things are good. Something was evil was done, and therefore we have to have retribution and punishment. They are providers and generators of good things. So therefore, the honor and the seeking the well, being better, what makes one well off. These are what are they are providers and generators of good things. The serious man, the spoudios, would deal in a noble fashion with poverty, disease, and other bad fortunes. In other words, if you are confronted with these bad things, evils, poverty, diseases, and other bad fortunes, the noble man would deal with these in a beautiful fashion, the best possible way. The noble, kalos, fashion. In other words, fashion. So therefore, in other words, bad fortune or disease, poverty. But the blessed is in their opposite. In other words, the blessing, these good things, are not poverty, disease, but they're opposites: wealth, um, being well off, disease, health, and good fortune. Right? Indeed, it was defined thus in the ethical discourses. Now, by this he means Udemy ethics. Right? This is again what's so interesting is that the politics here is more echoing. Sometimes it echoes. Some people we argue that it echoes the politics we have seem to echo the Eudemonian ethics more than the Nicomachean ethics. And you have to remember the Nicomachean ethics and the Eudemian ethics are kind of have overlapping sections, particularly the practical books, right? The books on virtue, the common books, the books that are common. They have they deal. Whereas the middle books are the part that hold together. These are very similar to each other. They're not identical completely, but they're very similar to each other. Whereas the beginning books and the end books, different. There's differing that way. Now, indeed, what was defined in the ethical discourse is that the excellent person, the serious man, the subdios. Again, this is his excellence. This is not virtuous person. This is excellence not as virtue, but here excellence as spoudios. The spoudios is one of a sort of whom, on account of his virtue, his arete, his excellence, the things that are good, the unqualifiedly good, are good. In other words, the things who are his virtue, on account of his virtue, the things that are unqualifiedly, the good unqualifiedly, are actually good, beneficial, useful. And it is clear that his uses of these these good things, must necessarily be serious, expodios, and noble, kalos, beautiful, kalos, spoudios and kalos, right? In other words, that his uses of these good things must be necessarily also be serious, spoudios, and beautiful, noble, kalos, and an unqualified sense. Hence human beings consider the causes of happiness to be good things that are external, as if the lyre rather than the art were to be held the cause of brilliant and beautiful lyre playing. In other words, the thing itself. In other words, this is interesting. Human beings considered the cause of happiness to be the good things that are external, are the real reason of this, right? They think this, and therefore they make they think the lyre, the lyre, the thing, not the art of playing it, is the cause of the beautiful music, right? In other words, it's the doing, it's the action is the real happiness. It's not the things that manifest itself in happiness, material goods, external goods. Necessarily, therefore, some of the things mentioned must be present, while others must be supplied by the legislator. Okay, so what is this? Some things must be present. In other words, some things, the character, these things, but then other things must be supplied by the legislator, the logo. Hence, we pray for the city to be constituted on the basis of obtaining those matters over which fortune has authority. We regard as having authority over external things. We regard as being desirable for the best city to have present. But the cities being excellent is no longer the work of fortune. City itself, in other words, the city itself, but of knowledge and intentional choice. So therefore, this is a very interesting thing. Material goods, that's a thing of fortune. External things, this is aspect of fortune. But of choice is the question of your character, the question of whether you're having the good character, the good having virtue, having the capacity for virtue, having the capacity for arete, excellence. Um, uh, uh, in other words, that hence we pray for the city to be constituted on the basis of 69 obtaining. Now reading Katashuan with Kraut rather than Katoyun according to prayer, right? With the manuscript according to fortune, right? With Drenzer. So the manuscript suggests according to prayer. Drenzer argues according to fortune. Uh, 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 so he instead reads it right here. What is it? Basis of attaining, right? On the constitute on fortune, in other words, obtaining those matters, or therefore by fortune or prayer, right? I think there is. I think prayer here constitute on the basis of obtaining these matters over which fortune has authority through fortune, right? In other words, either through fortune or this double meaning of the text. He's a basis of attaining. Um, uh, he's doing it with Kraut's interpretation on the basis of fortune prayer, or those things which fortune has authority, right? In regard to having authority, right? This is that passage, this line, over external things, but regard as being desirable for the best city to have present. This is that line 70. The text is somewhat uncertain. I assume Lakana the following, right? This is A30. He adds something to the text. But the city being excellent is no longer the work of fortune, but of knowledge and intentional choice. In other words, that the city being serious, excellent means serious, dials. The city being as serious is no longer the work of fortune. The city is going to be serious. This is what? Of knowledge and intentional choice. But a city is serious at any rate through its citizens, those taking part in the regime, those who take part in the regime, being serious, spudaios, and uh, uh, um, and as excellent, remember, excellent here is spudaios, serious, the serious, like grave. In other words, this is the people who are concerned about these things. That and in our case, all citizens take part in the regime. So the cities is all take part in the regime. All the citizens take part in the regime in this best regime. So therefore, this requires intentional choice, not just like this. This then must be investigated. How a man becomes serious. This leads us to the ethics, right? This is the question of this. We know how the question of the good man and the good citizen, right? This leads us to the whole question of the good man and the good citizen. Here, this citizen must be, the citizen of this regime must be a good man, or spudaios. And this here is the spudaios, the serious citizen. Not agathos, spudaios. Now, not the he must not be the spudaios. He must be the spudaios. The spudaios with the good man, the serious man, this excellent man, not the agathos. It doesn't say agathos. He says the spudaios. Now, even it is possible for all to be serious, spudaios, but it's not each. But not each of the citizens individually. The latter is more choice-worthy, for all being serious follows from all individually being serious, Budios. So therefore, this is interesting that in other words, not should be collectively spudios. This seems to suggest that whereas in book three, where the argument of this to be aggregatively, that they're not all equally spudios or good. In fact, many are not good, but collectively they are. But collectively, in Book 3:11, he argued that they are able to make decisions, that they are able to act as wise or good as, or even spudios. Now they argue both spudios and agathos, as though the best one, the best man. They're, in other words, as good as their understanding collectively. The many are collectively virtuous, and their virtue is as good as the best man, or better than. Okay, as better than or as good as, right? As long as they're not slavish. That's that line in three. Here, what's happening here is that the insistence on that all have to have that the city is good because all of them are spudaios, serious. Okay? Now, men become good and serious through three things. These three are nature, habit, and reason. Phusus, ethos, and logos, right? This is a very important thing. It's not, in other words, it's not logos. I don't notice that it's not. We argue normally tradition of phusos and nomos, right? The phrase dichotomy, the convention and nature, right? Law and nature, right? Here he says no, it's nature, phusis, habit. It's not law, habit, which is kind of a second nature, Aristotle says in his ethics, and logos, reason. One must first develop naturally as a human being, and not some one of the other animals. In other words, we have to develop, and not as some one of the other animals. We're human beings, which have logos and habit. We have, in other words, some animals have habit, some only have their nature. We have all three, right? So therefore, this is what distinguishes the other animals, right? But also be of a certain quality. In other words, so we should have human beings and not some of the other animals, but so also be of a certain quality of body and soul. Again, our habit and reason. In other words, this is in all three: our nature, our habit, and our reason. And a certain quality of body and soul. Body, the body, and the soul, the spirit, the spirit. Our soul is what? The psyche, the mind. We can say the psyche, mind. This is what he says: psyche, soul, mind. We can say mind. We can say this. This is the mind, right? It's body and soul, the psyche. But and the soul consists of the desiring, the thematic, and the rational, right? This is the famous argument in Aristotle's De Anima, right? Discussion of this three. It is like the desiring, like Plato, the desiring part, the thematic part, and the spirited part, and the rational part, right? But there is no benefit, but there is no benefit in certain qualities developing naturally. So there is no benefit in certain qualities developing naturally, since habit makes them alter. Certain qualities are ambiguous in their nature, and through habit develop in the direction of better and worse. So this is, in other words, in other words, natures can be ambiguous, right? Nature itself can be ambiguous. Nature, but then what happens is that through their habit, they can be better and worse. That if by habit, if I like the alcoholic can be by nature alcoholic, but he never drinks, never gets the habit of drinking. He doesn't become an alcoholic. Okay. If he drinks, gets the habit of drinking, he will become he will actualize his alcoholism. So ambiguous in nature, and through habits develop the direction of better and worse. The other animals live by nature above all. So animals live above nature, but in some slight respect by habit as well. While man lives by reason, for he alone has reason, logos. So these things should be constant with one another. For men act in many ways contrary to the habituation, their habits, and their nature through reason. In other words, reason can move them. Logos can move them contra their habits. So therefore, nature, their inclination, their nature of their body and soul, habits as the structures of their second nature, right? Their habits of what they do. And the habits can be, in other words, even something ambiguous by nature, but the habits can be either positive or negative. And then reason can dictate and override and shape and to direct even overcome nature, and also overcome what habit. But these things should be constant. In other words, respect by habit as well. Why man liveth also by reason, for he is alone has reason. So these things should be consonant with one another, right? For men act in many ways contrary to their habituation and their nature through reason, if they are persuaded that some other condition is better. So they argue utility, right? What is better? In other words, that they're persuaded that something is better. Reason can persuade. Reason can say, "Hey, this is better, and this is worse. This is better. So choose this." Right? They're persuaded by reason. Reason can persuade us to overcome our inclination, either our inclination of our nature or the inclination of our habit. Right? Our habit, and then for reason can force us to overcome our habit, or even overcome our nature, because we've been persuaded that this is better. Right? Now, as to the sort of nature those should have who are going to be readily taken in hand by the legislature, we have discussed earlier, right? This is 71. This is 7-7 about whether you should have spirit balance. This takes us to the question of the different people. Should they be overly spirited but be slight? In other words, should they have lots of spirit but not governed by thought, or they should be have governed by thought but not that spirited, but rather the middling sort, that the both have some, not so be spirited but not too spirited, but also have thought, but not lacking of spirit. They should have this Greek model, the Greek balance, right? This idea of not being dominated by spirit without thought, but also not dominated by thought without spirit. Right? This is the European, the Germanic northern tribes, the northern Europeans are spirit without culture, without thought. The Asians are what thought, full of thought and culture, but not spirit. Right? This is chapter 7 of book 7. When he's dealt with this, what remains at this point is the work of education. For men learn some things by being habituated, other by listening. So now he's switching the topic. Now he's going to switch the discussion of the best regime from the regime now to the question of learning. How do you learn? How do you educate? Education. And the remaining part of this book will be about in books thing. We'll focus on education, right? Education. How to educate. How is the regime going to educate? So let's stop here. This is where we end. Next thing is going to be chapter 14. So if you have any comments or questions here, please put the comments and questions, and when I see them, I'll respond to it. If you have any issues or themes, please put it there. If you liked it, like it. Please share it on social media. Share it with your friends. If you've not subscribed, subscribe. If you have subscribed, please encourage others to join this. Share these videos with your friends on social media. Another thing you can do is, if you didn't like it, you can say what it's wrong, criticize. Say comments. Please put the comments below about this. If you want to follow me on social media, you can links are below. If you want to help me do these things, help me with the videos, you can do so by remembering to subscribe to our Patreon. Again, I understand some people aren't there, and I need, maybe if there are people there, I'll do things. So okay, right now this is not there, so maybe sometime decades from now, people say, oh. Another way you can help me and directly help me is to buy my book. You can buy my book. This is my current book. I have other books that you can buy them, but this will help me directly because I published it myself through Lulu. This is a notebook for Aristotle's Politics, a workbook. This is not a commentary. This is a kind of like Cliff's Notes for politics. This is a study guide. This is a guide to guide you through when you're reading the text, either from if you're just an introductory student, to their more advanced students of looking at the politics. It offers you an overview of the text, and how you grasp it. It looks at it from book, chapter by chapter. It gives outlines, summaries, highlights the various charts, graphs, themes, and outlines that Aristotle to kind of grasp the text and get a better understanding of the text through the various chapters and sections. Things that we're doing here in a little more detail than lectures that I've been doing on videos for you guys. So you can buy it directly. It's available at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and other things online. But if you buy it by Lulu, I will get the money that those bookstores get. Please do it by Lulu. I understand that Lulu may charge a little you more for it, and therefore you might opt to go to the bookstore to get free books. But whatever way, even if you buy it by the bookstore, I'll get something. So please go buy a copy. If you not buy it for yourself, you bought it already, buy it for a friend or a student you know, recommend it to students who are studying the politics. If you're a teacher reading this, get your students to, if they need help, to take the look, go get this. It's worth having, I hope. I believe it is worth having. I'll stop there. Okay, that's it. I hope you have a good day. Take care and bye-bye.